1984, the best year in film. If you ask me, this is the year that released some of the most iconic films that we still watch today, that still impact movies that are released today. Hell, some of these movies got sequels this year. This video is a concept I've been toying with for a little while. I don't think I've seen it done before, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it had been done. To make my case, I'm gonna list off a couple movies and talk about each of them. And by a couple, I mean like 15 or 20. I'm not gonna be talking about every movie from 1984, but I will talk about the ones that I think make it the best year. We'll go in release order just because I think that's fun. February 17th, Footloose. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this movie personally, but I do love Kevin Bacon, and I do love John Lithgow. And who doesn't love Kenny Loggins? Footloose is super iconic. A lot of people still look back on this movie and make references to it.
It's not.
Like in Footloose, the movie?
Exactly like Footloose. Is it still the greatest movie in history?
It never was.
There was a remake of this movie a few years ago and everything. If you love 80s movies, you have to see this movie. For me, this isn't high on the rewatchability, but it helps shape this year of film. This is an iconic movie, whether you love the film or not. March 2nd is actually a double hitter. First up, we're gonna talk about Repo Man. Repo Man stars Emilio Estevez and Harry Dean Stanton. I highly recommend checking this movie out if you haven't. This is a movie that not a lot of people outside of the film geek community have seen.
Hey, look at that. Look at those assholes over there. Ordinary fucking people. I hate them.
That I don't see brought up enough, and I smile big and wide every time I see it referenced in another movie or TV show.
An ordinary person spends his life avoiding tense situations. Repo Man spends his life getting into tense situations. Filter!
Also released on March 2nd, this is Spinal Tap. This is a movie I saw when I was like maybe 17. I watched it with my brother for the first time. This movie's gonna be much better if you're a musician, an audio engineer, someone who works around or with or just really loves the music industry, especially if you're familiar with 60s, 70s, and 80s music. There's a bunch of mockumentary comedy films. This is right up there at the top for me. I don't know if I'd say I like this or Best in Show better, but Christopher Guest and Michael McKean are in both of them, and they steal the show both times. On March 9th, we have Children of the Corn starring Linda Hamilton. Children of the Corn, not my favorite horror movie, but I do think it's worth looking back on. It obviously set up a whole franchise, and this is the best one in that franchise. I think this movie should get a little more credit. It's really spooky. March 23rd, Police Academy. Another one people still talk about today or you see referenced. This isn't one of those ones that old people would say, yo, you can't make that film today. But yeah, you know, whatever. April 13th, which was a Friday, by the way. Friday the 13th, the final chapter. I think without a doubt the best Friday the 13th movie in the franchise. I think a lot of people will agree with me on that, even if your personal favorite is a different movie in the franchise. This one stars Corey Feldman and Crispin Glover. Corey Feldman, again, he's going to appear on this list later on too. This is like the most rewatchable Friday the 13th for me. It is what you would think of if you think of like a good classic Friday the 13th movie. This right here was one of the alarm buzzers in my head of, wait, this might be one of the best years in film. May 4th, 16 Candles, directed by John Hughes. 16 Candles is absolutely iconic. The first of John Hughes' streak of teen comedies in the 80s. These movies took the world by storm. Andrew McCarthy just did a whole documentary about the Brat Pack. Should check that out on Hulu if you're interested. But I actually got a chance to see 16 Candles in the theater again, I think on its 25th anniversary, which is crazy because that's like 15 years ago now. May 23rd, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Now, depending on what kind of Indiana Jones fan you are, you might hate this movie. Personally, it's the only Indiana Jones movie I want to rewatch over and over and over again. Listen, I love Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I think that's a close second. But Temple of Doom is like Indiana Jones in a cultish horror movie. That's what I want. That's what I'm here for. That's my vibe. June 1st, you have Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Again, one of the best Star Trek movies. The epic, legendary sequel to Wrath of Khan. I was never a huge Star Trek fan. I saw the 2009 Star Trek in theaters, and I really liked that. That got me interested. I watched some of Next Generation, and I liked it, but I never went through and finished the whole series or anything. These Star Trek movies are the ones that got me into Star Trek. And I'm still not the most knowledgeable or the biggest fan of it or anything. I still haven't watched all the series by any means. But like the 80s and early 90s are peak Star Trek for me. June 8th, perhaps the best double hitter release of all time. Ghostbusters and Gremlins. If there's ever a time to see 2 movies in a day, this was it. Look, I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. I've been to the premiere of the last 2 Ghostbusters movies. I've been in the same room as Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, multiple times. I seek out Ghostbusters stuff to do. I've done filming location tour videos in New York City. It is my #1 of all time. Gremlins? Gremlins is probably in my top 10. It's such a classic. I could watch Gremlins all the time. I try to save it to just watch it once every December, so that way it's at least a little fresh. I got like a year of not watching it. And then sometime in the summer, I usually watch Gremlins too. This would be the second appearance of Corey Feldman that I mentioned before as well. June 22nd, The Karate Kid. Hell yeah, The Karate Kid also came out in 1984. They're still doing Karate Kid stuff. Karate Kid I didn't see till I was 10 or 11, and it was just on TV one day while I was at my grandma's during the summer. They had a little screen that you could set up in the garage so you could kind of hang out in there in a screened-in garage. They had a little TV out there during the summer, and I would watch TV out there sometimes, and that's where I casually watched this. July 20th, The Never-Ending Story. This one is not rewatchable, simply because of trauma. You know the trauma I'm talking about, and if you don't know about the trauma, go watch this movie so we can all have shared trauma. Still, it's a great movie. If you just skip over that one scene, it's awesome. I just can't handle that heartbreak anymore. I can't do it. July 27th, Purple Rain. I'm a huge Prince fan. I got a Purple Rain tattoo. I've recorded music and I sought out the same drum machines that he used on that album. I'm a geek for Prince, what can I say? The first time I watched this movie, it was also the first time that I took dabs. It was a wild experience, let me tell you that. August 10th, the release of Red Dawn. Red Dawn, I think they remade this movie in like 2012, starring Chris Hemsworth, and Josh Peck was in that too. It's actually not a terrible remake until you get to the end. October 26th, The Terminator. Linda Hamilton, once again. She was also in Children of the Corn. She's also in The Terminator. Terminator, much more iconic, obviously. Did a lot more for her career, especially once she did Terminator 2. But you would have no Terminator 2 without Terminator. I think this is one of the biggest contributors to this being my reasoning for 1984 being the best year of film. The Terminator is iconic. I rewatch this movie all the time. Still, like I'm just like, you know what? I kind of feel like watching The Terminator. I probably watched it 3 months ago, but I'm gonna watch it again. November 9th, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Again, huge contributing factor to why 1984 is the best year. This set off, obviously, a chain of sequels. Freddy Krueger is one of the most iconic horror villains of all time. And I'm including like Universal Monsters and everything in that. We also had perhaps the best Friday the 13th movie released this year. This was a year for horror, it was a year for comedy, it was the year for action. December 5th, Beverly Hills Cop. Another movie that 40 years later is getting another sequel this year. Beverly Hills Cop is actually coming out in a couple days, isn't it? This is an awesome movie, and they actually shot scenes from this movie in the same hotel they shot Ghostbusters in when they catch Slimer. Fun fact, I've stayed at that hotel in 2019, specifically because it was the hotel from Ghostbusters. If I had to pick 5 of these movies that I just talked about, that would accurately represent 1984 and why it is the best year in film, those would be Ghostbusters, Gremlins, The Terminator, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Beverly Hills Cop. If you think I got this completely wrong and you think there's a better year in film, comment it down below. I'm not saying we should hand the year 1984 an award or anything, I just think it's an interesting observation I came across. So I thought I'd make this video and share my thoughts. If you like this video, be sure to check out this one and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.